Based on this story, we will learn about the Dunning-Kruger effect in corporate leadership. It is a cognitive bias where people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. In the corporate world, this manifests as the new broom syndrome, the arrogance of an incoming leader who destroys institutional knowledge because they mistake their ignorance for innovation. They believe that if they don't understand why a fence was built, they have the right to tear it down. They are about to learn that some fences are actually load-bearing walls. If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you. The air in the hallway smelled of ozone and lemon-scented disinfectant, a sharp chemical overlay masking the deeper, older scent of brass and machine oil that had lived in these walls for 50 years. I paused outside the frosted glass door, smoothing the lint from my cardigan. It was a tactical cardigan, beige, unassuming, the uniform of a woman who had settled for middle management. Inside, Monica was on the phone. She didn't look up when I entered. She was perhaps 32, wearing a suit that cost more than my first car and projected an image of aggressive competency. She held a gold pen like a dagger. "No, I don't care what the union rep said," she said into her headset, her voice a polished mezzo-soprano that lacked any real warmth. "Just, look, handle it. I'm going to have to call you back. Yeah." She tapped her phone off and finally acknowledged me. Her eyes swept over me, cataloging my age, my attire, and my presumed irrelevance in under 3 seconds. It was a predator's scan, efficient and dismissive. "Vivian, right?" she asked, though we both knew she had my file open on the tablet in front of her. "Thanks for coming up. Take a seat." I sat. I folded my hands in my lap. I waited. In negotiations, the first person to speak loses leverage. I watched her rearrange 3 perfectly aligned papers on her desk. She was trying to establish dominance through silence, a textbook move from Management 101. It was adorable. "So," she started, leaning back, "I've been reviewing the efficiency reports for the Quality Control Division, and honestly, the numbers they're concerning." She paused, waiting for me to defend myself. I didn't. I just blinked, the picture of a confused older employee. "Concerning?" I echoed softly. "Yeah, the turnaround time on the Kronos series is lagging by 40% compared to industry standards. We're bleeding time." She didn't understand that the Kronos movement required hand-beveled edges that took 3 days to perfect. She saw numbers. She didn't see the art. She saw a line on a spreadsheet that needed to be deleted. "Quality takes time," I offered, deliberately weak. "Profit takes speed," she countered, a rehearsed line. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It was a pity smile. "We need to talk about your future here, Vivian." Why did she look at the door when she said the word future? "What's like we're restructuring," Monica said. The word hung in the air, sterile and violent, moving toward a more streamlined approach. Automation-assisted QA, it's the industry standard now. I watched her hands. She was picking at a loose thread on her cuff. A nervous tick? No, boredom. She had done this a dozen times before. I was just another appointment before lunch. "I see," I said. "So I'm being fired?" "Let's not use that word," she said quickly, her voice dropping to a register of mock sympathy. "Think of it as an early retirement opportunity. We've put together a severance package. It's generous, really generous considering the circumstances." She slid a thick envelope across the mahogany desk. I didn't touch it. I knew exactly what was in it. 3 months' pay, a continuation of benefits for 6 months, and a non-disclosure agreement thick enough to choke a horse. "I've been here since the doors opened," I lied. Well, a half lie. I had opened the doors. I bought the building. This company is my life. "And we appreciate that service," Monica said, checking her watch. A smartwatch. Digital. "But the market shifts. We have to shift with it. It's nothing personal, Vivian. It's just math." She looked at me with that weaponized concern. She wanted me to cry. She wanted a scene she could manage with tissues and platitudes. "And if I don't sign?" I asked. Her expression hardened instantly. The mask slipped. Then we terminate for cause. Inefficiency. Failure to adapt to new protocols. You'd leave with nothing. Don't make this hard on yourself. Take the win. Was she actually threatening me with my own payroll department? Sex. My office was a glass box overlooking the assembly floor. I moved slowly, placing personal items into a cardboard box. A framed photo of my dog. A chipped mug that said, "World's okayest boss." Props. All props. Through the glass, I could see Monica walking the floor with a group of investors. She was pointing at the watchmakers, hunched over their benches, loops in their eyes. She was performing ownership. I cracked the door open just an inch to hear her. "And here is where we assemble the, tourbillons," she said, butchering the pronunciation of tourbillon so badly it physically hurt my ears. "We're going to increase throughput here by 30% by Q3. One of the investors, a man in a gray suit who looked like he depreciated assets for sport, nodded gravely. "And the labor costs?" "We're addressing that," Monica said, her voice carrying the sharp edge of a guillotine. "Identify the bottlenecks. Remove them." I was the bottleneck. The master watchmakers were the bottlenecks. Anyone who cared about the ticking heart of the machine was a bottleneck. I looked at the severance agreement on my desk. Standard release of claims. Waiver of rights. She hadn't even had legal customize it. It was a template. She thought so little of me, she hadn't even bothered to load the gun properly. I dropped the mug into the trash can. It shattered loudly. Heads turned on the floor. Monica looked up, annoyed. I gave her a small, trembling wave. Did she really think the woman who built the Valkyrie movement couldn't hear the ticking of a bomb? The Volvo was 20 years old. It rattled when it idled, a rhythmic thrum, thrum, thrum that usually soothed me. Today, it sounded like a countdown. I merged onto the highway, the gray sky pressing down on the windshield. I hit the speed dial. "Hey, Viv," my brother's voice cracked through the Bluetooth. "You okay? It's 2 in the afternoon." "She did it, Robert," I said, keeping my eyes on the road. "She pulled the trigger." "Fired?" "Restructured," I corrected. "She offered me 3 months and a pat on the head, cited efficiency issues." Robert laughed, a dry, barking sound. "Inefficiency? You invented the workflow she's using. Does she have any idea?" "None. She thinks I'm just Vivian, the QA manager, the sad widow who needs the health insurance." "Okay." Robert's tone shifted. He was the lawyer now. "So the vesting schedule, the Trojan clause in the original partnership agreement, it triggers upon the involuntary termination of any founder, regardless of their current operational title." "Exactly. But Viv, you have to sign the severance to make it stick. You have to let her believe you've accepted the termination. If you fight it now, she might dig. If she finds out you own 51% of the holding shell, she'll freeze you out before the board meeting." "I know," I said, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. "I have to play the victim. I have to let her win." "Can you do that?" Robert asked. "You've never lost a fight in your life." "I'm not losing, Robert," I whispered. "I'm flanking." But as I hung up, a cold knot formed in my stomach. What if I signed and the clause didn't hold? Sex. Arthur was making tea when I walked in. The kitchen smelled of chamomile and anxiety. He knew something was wrong. He always knew. He was a retired history teacher, a man of soft edges and deep worries. "You're home early," he said, not looking at me. "I got fired, Artie." The kettle whistled, a shrill scream that he hurriedly silenced. He turned, his face pale. "Fired? But, Vivian, the mortgage, the renovation loan for the cottage. We can't survive on just my pension." "I know," I said, sitting at the table. I couldn't tell him. Not yet. Plausible deniability was safer for everyone. If he knew I was the majority shareholder, he'd look smug. He'd look confident. Monica would smell it. What did What did they say?" he stammered, pouring the water with a shaking hand. "Restructuring. They offered a package." "Take it," he said immediately. "Vivian, you have to take it. We can't fight a corporation. They have lawyers. They have resources. We're just us." "It's humiliating, Arthur. The amount is insulting." "Pride doesn't pay the electric bill." He slammed the mug down, tea sloshing over the rim. Don't be difficult, Viv. Just, please, for once, don't make it a crusade. Just get what you can." He looked so small, so defeated by a hypothetical poverty. He was reacting exactly as Monica expected a dependent spouse to react. Fear was the lever she used to pry compliance out of people. "I'll go back tomorrow," I said softly, reaching for his hand. His skin was cold. "I'll sign the papers." "Good," he exhaled, slumping into the chair. That's sensible." He didn't see the wolf in the room. He thought the danger was the lack of money. He didn't realize the danger was me. Meta. Sex 1.5. I wore the same cardigan, continuity of character. When I walked into Monica's office, she didn't even stand up. I've thought about it," I said, my voice pitched slightly higher than normal, breathless, anxious. "And my husband, he thinks I should sign." Monica smiled. It was a predator's smile, satisfied and slightly bored. "Your husband is a smart man. It's really the best option for everyone." She pushed the papers toward me. I took the pen. My hand trembled, intentionally. I spent 30 years here," I mumbled, reading the bold text. "Release of all claims." "It feels like I'm erasing myself." "You're not erasing yourself, Vivian," Monica said, her voice dripping with that fake, syrup-thick empathy. "You're starting a new chapter. You should be excited. Honestly, I'm jealous. I'd love to just stop working." She checked her email while I signed. She didn't even watch. That was her mistake. If she had looked closely, she would have seen that I wasn't just signing my name. I was dating it, time-stamping the exact moment her clock started ticking down. "There," I said, sliding the papers back. "Great," she said, snatching them up. "So, HR will mail your check. You can leave your badge at the front desk. And, Vivian?" "Yes?" "Don't take this the wrong way, but maybe don't come by for a while. It upsets the staff. We want a clean break." "Of course," I said, standing up. "I wouldn't want to cause any confusion." As I walked to the elevator, I realized she hadn't asked for my key fob. The digital badge, yes, but the physical master key to the server room, the one I kept on my keychain next to the pepper spray, she didn't even know it existed. Sex. I sat in my Volvo in the far corner of the parking lot. I should have left, but I couldn't. At 10 a.m., a black van pulled up. 4 men got out. They weren't watch enthusiasts. They wore cheap suits that fit poorly across the shoulders, and they carried clipboards like shields. I rolled down my window. The wind carried the scent of exhaust and rain. They walked toward the factory entrance, led by Monica. She was gesturing wildly, pointing at the loading docks. "Consultants," I whispered. One of them stopped to light a cigarette. He tossed the butt onto the pristine flower bed I had planted 5 years ago. He ground it into the soil with his heel. I recognized him. Not him personally, but his type. He was a liquidator, a man who looked at a legacy and saw only the salvage value of the copper wiring in the walls. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert. "Did you sign?" I typed back, "Signed, sealed, delivered." I watched the man flick ash onto the pavement. Monica laughed at something he said. She was flirting with the executioner. If they were bringing in liquidators this early, the timeline was shorter than I thought. They weren't just outsourcing. They were gutting the place. Why would she rush it? Unless she was in debt? Or unless the minority partners were pushing for a quick sale? Sex 1.5. Waited until 7 p.m. The parking lot emptied out, leaving only Monica's sleek German sports car and the janitorial van. I walked to the side entrance. The digital reader was red. My badge was deactivated. But the physical lock? The tumbler clicked satisfyingly as I turned my key. Old tech, reliable. The office was dark, smelling of stale coffee and carpet cleaner. I moved silently to the server room. The hum of the cooling fans was a familiar lullaby. I didn't need to hack anything. I just needed to log in. Monica had revoked Vivian_QA from the Active Directory. She hadn't revoked sysadmin_root. Why would she? She probably thought the server ran on magic. I accessed her email spool. It was shockingly easy. Password 123? No, but close. Monica wins. I scrolled through the sent folder. Subject, Asset Allocation, Project Titan. 2, Sterling Capital _Partners. Phase 1 complete. The old guard is out. Payroll reduced by 18%. We are ready to begin the land valuation assessment next week. The factory site is zoned for luxury condos, which should triple the exit value. Condos. She wasn't outsourcing production. She was closing the company. She was going to bulldoze the factory, fire everyone, sell the brand name to a Chinese conglomerate, and sell the land to developers. My hands shook, not from fear, but from a cold, crystalline rage. My father built this building. I plugged in a flash drive. The progress bar crawled across the screen. Copying. Footsteps in the hallway. Click, clack, click, clack. Heels on linoleum. I froze. The progress bar was at 80%. Hello? Monica's voice. Is someone in there? Shh, I didn't get caught. I slipped out the back just as the janitor turned his vacuum on, masking my exit. But I had the drive. 2 days later, the annual shareholder dinner. It was held at Le Chat Noir, a place that served steaks the size of hubcaps and wine that cost more than a kidney. I arrived late. I wore my black dress, the one with the sharp shoulders. I wore the pearls my mother left me. I didn't look like Vivian, the QA manager. I looked like money. The maitre d' stopped me. Madame, the private room is reserved for the bespoke horology board. I know, I said, breezing past him. I'm expected. I wasn't. I pushed open the double oak doors. The chatter died instantly. 12 men and Monica sat around a long table. Monica was mid-toast, a glass of champagne raised. To a future of streamlined efficiency and unprecedented growth, she was saying. She froze when she saw me. Her glass wavered. Vivian? She laughed, a nervous, jagged sound. What are you doing here? This is a private event. Did you get lost? She looked at the chairman, a man named Sterling. He looked confused. I'm not lost, Monica, I said, my voice clear and projecting to the back of the room. I'm here for the shareholder update. I believe I'm entitled to a seat. You're a fired employee, Monica hissed, dropping the facade. Security! Actually, I said, pulling out a chair at the head of the table, directly opposite her, I'm the majority shareholder, 51%, and I believe you're sitting in my seat. The silence that followed was heavy enough to crush a diamond. Monica didn't scream. She didn't yell. She was smarter than that. She looked at the other men, her eyes widening with that fake, terrifying concern. Oh, God, she whispered. I was afraid of this. She turned to Sterling. I didn't want to put this in the official report, but Vivian has been struggling, cognitively. That's why we had to let her go. She's been confused, imagining things, delusions of grandeur. She looked at me, her face a mask of pity. Vivian, honey, you don't own the company. You were the QA manager, remember? You signed the papers. You're having an episode. She was good. She was terrifyingly good. She took my truth and painted it as dementia. I have the documents, I said, reaching for my bag. Of course you do, she said soothingly, standing up and walking toward me. In your head you do. Gentlemen, I am so sorry. I'll call her husband. He told me she's been off her meds. She touched my arm. Her grip was like a vice. Don't make a scene, Vivian, she whispered in my ear, too low for the others to hear. Get out now, or I'll have you committed. I have the medical records faked already. I pulled away. The room was spinning. The men were looking at me with pity. They believed her. Why wouldn't they? She was the young, sharp CEO. I was the fired old woman in pearls. I'm not crazy, I said, but my voice trembled. We know, Monica said, signaling the waiter. Just tired, right? She had turned my own Trojan horse against me. I had played the victim so well that now no one believed I could be the victor. Sex, room was silent, save for the chairman, looked at me with the weary patience one reserves for a tantrum-throwing toddler. Monica was already texting someone under the table, probably security or a psychiatric hold team. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I reached into my clutch and pulled out a single, folded piece of paper. It wasn't a medical record. It was a photocopy of the original deed to the factory land, dated 1974. Sterling, I said, my voice dropping the tremulous act instantly. Do you remember who countersigned the land acquisition deal with the city? Sterling blinked. Vivian, please. It wasn't my husband, I interrupted, smoothing the paper on the tablecloth next to the centerpiece. And it wasn't the bank. It was me. My signature is on the deed restriction. Clause 4A. The land cannot be sold or rezoned for residential use without the unanimous consent of the original founding signatories. I looked at Monica. She had stopped texting. I am the only living signatory, I said. You can fire me. You can call me crazy. But if you try to sell that land for condos, the title search will freeze you in litigation for a decade. Sterling picked up the paper. He adjusted his glasses. The pity in his eyes was replaced by a sudden, sharp calculation. She's bluffing, Monica said, but her voice was tight. That deed is 50 years old. We have newer bylaws. Bylaws don't supersede deed restrictions, I said, taking a sip of Sterling's water. Check with legal. I'll wait. Sterling looked at Monica, then at the paper. The dynamic in the room shifted. It wasn't a dinner anymore. It was a deposition. We reconvened in the hallway. Monica had lost the room, but she hadn't lost her nerve. She cornered me near the coat check, her face inches from mine. She smelled of expensive perfume and cold sweat. You stole proprietary documents, she hissed. Accessing the deed? That's corporate espionage. I can have you arrested before you get to your car. It's public record, Monica, I said, buttoning my coat. Anyone with a library card can find it. You just never looked because you were too busy picking out drapes for the condos. I'm going to bury you, she said. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement of intent. I have lawyers on retainer who enjoy destroying pensioners for sport. I will sue you for defamation, for breach of NDA, for stealing office supplies if I have to. I will drain your savings until you can't afford the gas to drive that piece of junk Volvo. She wasn't scared. That was the thing about narcissists. When cornered, they don't see a wall. They see a challenge. She genuinely believed she could litigate reality into submission. You're going to try, I agreed, but you're forgetting something. Litigation takes time, and time is the one thing your quick exit strategy doesn't have. I walked out into the cool night air. My hands were shaking, but this time it was from adrenaline. She had just confirmed she was desperate. Sex. The next morning, my phone buzzed. It was Lucas, the head watchmaker. He was 70 years old and had hands that could engrave a prayer on a grain of rice. Vivian, he whispered, you have to come. They are touching the grand complication. I met him at a diner 3 miles from the factory. He looked gray. She ordered us to swap the platinum rotors for tungsten, he said, his voice trembling with professional horror. Tungsten, Vivian. It disrupts the weight distribution. The watch won't keep time after 3 years. It will grind itself to dust. It's cheaper, I said, stirring my coffee. Tungsten is a fraction of the cost of platinum. It's fraud, Lucas slammed his hand on the table. We sell these watches for $50,000 with a lifetime guarantee. If we sell them with tungsten internals, we are selling garbage. She doesn't care about the lifetime, I said. She only cares about Q3. If the watch breaks in 3 years, that's the next CEO's problem. Lucas looked at me, his eyes wet. She fired the apprentice, Marco, because he refused to do it. She called him insubordinate. Vivian, she is killing the soul of the place. I know, Lucas, I said. I need you to do something for me. I need you to build one of her tungsten rotors, but I need you to make a modification. What kind? I want you to engrave something on the inside, microscopic, something only a watchmaker would find. Sex the meeting through a shell company. My brother Robert set it up. I wasn't Vivian the owner. I was anonymous source, a disgruntled former executive with dirt on bespoke horology. I met the prospective buyers, representatives from the luxury conglomerate Luxhold, in a hotel bar. They were slick young men who ordered scotch they didn't know how to drink. So, the lead buyer, a man named Davis, said, "You claim the valuation is inflated?" "I don't claim it," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "I know it. The inventory is compromised, the land is legally gridlocked, and the labor force is on the verge of a walkout." Davis laughed. "We don't care about the labor force. We're firing them anyway. We're moving production to Shenzhen next month. We just want the logo." I paused. This was it, the admission. "You're shutting down the domestic factory entirely?" I asked, leaning in. "But the brand identity is built on Swiss tradition, American assembled." "Marketing fluff," Davis waved a hand. "Nobody cares where it's made as long as the box looks expensive. We're buying the brand, not the baggage. We'll liquidate the assets, bulldoze the factory, and slap the logo on smartwatches." I tapped my purse, where my phone was recording. "Does Monica know this?" I asked. "Know it? It was her idea," Davis smirked. "She pitched it to us. Strip and flip, she called it." Sex. I sat in my car and played it back. The audio was crisp. Strip and flip. It was gross negligence. It was a breach of fiduciary duty to the minority shareholders who believed in the long-term health of the company. Monica wasn't just incompetent. She was actively conspiring to devalue the product to facilitate a sale that would enrich her and destroy the company. I sent the file to Robert. "Is this enough?" I texted. "It's a nuclear bomb," he replied. Section 12 of the Corporate Charter. Acts of bad faith negotiation. You can strip her of her severance, her options, everything. I looked at the factory in the distance. The lights were on. Lucas was in there, putting tungsten into a masterpiece, weeping as he worked. I wasn't just going to fire her. I was going to ruin her. Meta. I triggered the emergency clause. As the owner of 51% of the voting shares, which vested the moment my employment was terminated without cause, thank you, Scene 2, I had the right to call a plenary session. Monica tried to block it. She sent security to the gate. But I walked in with Robert and 2 sheriff's deputies. A court order is a wonderful thing. We marched into the boardroom. The entire board was there, summoned by legal writ. Monica stood at the head of the table, looking like a cornered viper. "This is illegal," she spat. "She is a trespasser." "I am the majority owner," I said, throwing the vesting paperwork on the table. "And I am calling this meeting to order." Sterling looked at the papers. He looked at the deed restriction I had shown him earlier. He sat down. "Let her speak," Sterling said. "She's senile," Monica shrieked. It was the first time I'd heard her raise her voice. She was losing control. "I may be old, Monica," I said, plugging my laptop into the projector, "but my hearing is excellent." "Sex. You are trying to sabotage this deal," Monica said, regaining her composure, smoothing her suit. She turned to the board. Gentlemen, look at the numbers. I have a verbal offer from Luxhold for 200% of the current stock price. Vivian is emotional. She's attached to the past. I am offering you a golden exit. She was seductive. Greed is a powerful drug, and she was pushing it hard. The board members exchanged glances. Money talks. "We are in the business of making money," one board member said. "If Monica has a buyer—" "She doesn't have a buyer for the company," I said. "She has a buyer for the corpse." "That's dramatic," Monica scoffed. "We are evolving the brand." "You're killing it," I said. "And I can prove that you are acting in bad faith, effectively defrauding these men." "Slander," Monica said coolly. "I'll add it to the lawsuit." She was so arrogant. She truly believed that because she was young and ruthless, she was invincible. She didn't understand that old and ruthless beats young and ruthless every time. Sex. I hit play. The voice of Davis filled the room. "Marketing fluff. We're buying the brand, not the baggage." She pitched it to us. Strip and flip. The color drained from Sterling's face. The board members froze. Strip and flip meant the stock they held would be worthless after the initial buyout, and the legal liability for the layoffs would fall on them. Then I put up the email, the one where she laughed about the consultants destroying the flower beds. And then the coup de grace. I projected a live feed from the factory floor, courtesy of Lucas's phone. It showed the consultants packing up the specialized tooling, machines that were listed as assets on the balance sheet, into unmarked trucks. "She's not just selling the company," I said. "She's liquidating the assets before the sale. That's theft, and you are all liable." Monica stood frozen. Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she had no pivot, no buzzword. "Sex from the other day." "This is out of context," Monica finally managed. Her Lucas is all dated it. Monica stood from the voice, then. "I was maximizing value." "You were maximizing your parachute," I said. I looked at Sterling. "I move for a vote of no confidence and a termination for cause under the gross negligence clause." "Seconded," Sterling said immediately. He looked at Monica with disgust. Not because she was evil, but because she had almost got him sued. "All in favor?" Every hand went up. "You can't do this," Monica said, gripping the table. "I have a contract. I have a golden parachute. $5 million. Clause 9C, I said, reciting it from memory. "In the event of termination for gross negligence or acts of bad faith, all severance is forfeit. You leave with nothing, Monica, not even the phone." I held out my hand. "Phone," I said. She stared at me. Her eyes were full of hate, pure, unadulterated hate. But she handed it over. Security escorted her out. She didn't cry. She walked with her head high, clicking her heels, convincing herself that she was the victim of a Luddite conspiracy. She would never learn. She would go to another company, destroy it, and call it disruption. I sat at the head of the table. The board looked at me, expecting, what? A speech? "Lucas is reinstalling the platinum rotors," I said. "It will cost us a quarter's profits to fix the damage she did in a week." "Vivian," Sterling said, "we need a CEO." I looked at the empty chair. I looked at the factory floor through the window. I wanted to go back to my garden. I wanted to sit in my kitchen with Arthur. But I knew I couldn't. "I'll do it," I said. "But we're doing it my way. No consultants, no efficiency experts. We make watches. If they're slow, they're slow." I picked up the world's okayest boss mug that someone, Lucas probably, had retrieved from the trash and placed on the table. "Now," I said, "get out of my office." Lesson learned: the Dunning-Kruger effect in corporate leadership. In this story, Monica exemplified the dangerous peak of Mount Stupid, the early stage of the Dunning-Kruger effect, where confidence is high, but competence is low. She mistook her ability to read a spreadsheet for the ability to run a business. She failed because she viewed institutional knowledge, Vivian and the artisans, as an inefficiency to be eliminated rather than an asset to be leveraged. She believed that disruption was a strategy in itself, ignoring the Chesterton's fence principle. Do not remove a fence until you understand why it was put there. Key takeaway. True competence is quiet. It listens before it acts, and it knows that in a battle between a generic strategy and deep, specialized expertise, expertise usually holds the deed to the land. If this story and consider subscribing, you can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here.